The status of language in France seems pretty simple, doesn't it? I mean, people in France speak French, right? Well, not so fast. But before we can jump into the nuts and bolts of France's ever changing linguistic landscape, it's important to have some historical context of what's been going on in this country. So to do this, we're going to have to go way back. Back in 1539, King Francis I, or François Ier as they like to call him over there, issued an edict stating that Francien would become the sole administrative language for all of France. What's Francien, you might ask? Funny enough, it was a regional dialect of Paris, given a privileged status within the government, and today we simply know it as French.
Fast forward 100 years, and you have King Louis XIII, who in 1635 created l'Académie Française, the official governing body over the purity and promotion of the French language. During this time period, many regional dialects were spoken all throughout France, and the French language had not spread fully throughout the country. Everybody was happy, multilingual, and doing their own thing. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end.
This end began in 1789 with the start of the French Revolution. During this time period, calls for national unity were at an all-time high, and anyone who was seen as a potential threat to the revolutionary movement was deemed an enemy of the movement and faced dire consequences such as death by guillotine. One of these potential threats was speaking languages other than Standard French, and yes, that includes all of the regional languages that you can take a peek at on your handout. Let's keep in mind, Old Francien was one of these regional languages. It just got a bit lucky. All of this being said, the French Revolution effectively began the downfall of regional languages within France, and ever since, these languages have not experienced anywhere near the same level of privilege or dominance within the nation. Feeling high and mighty after their revolutionary victory, France decided it was time to take its talents elsewhere. And by talents, I mean cultural linguistic assimilation through colonization. And by elsewhere, we're talking about North Africa specifically.
In 1830, France began its North African conquest by invading Algeria, and the war lasted until 1848. From 1848 until 1954, Algeria remained under French rule, and in the meantime, France conquered numerous other African nations and part of the Middle East. It was around this time that we saw a host of African nations gain their independence from French colonial rule. However, they were not able to gain independence from French colonial influence.
During this time period, many previously colonized North Africans emigrated to France in hopes of escaping bloody civil wars and finding economic prosperity and asylum within the country that had once dominated their lives for so long. These immigrants spoke French, but they also carried with them deeply rooted linguistic and cultural identities that were not welcomed within this incredibly nationalistic French society. So now that we've set the scene, let's fast forward to today. Remember how we just mentioned that French was incredibly nationalistic and clearly protective of its own official language? Okay, well, one of the main tools by which France promotes this nationalism is through language within its school system. The French school system is a state-funded, compulsory, and secular system, and does not allow for linguistic diversity within the classroom. France recognizes the trends of globalization, however, and sees, in theory, the benefits of multilingualism. This is why they have created the educational policy of Mother Tongue +2, Mother Tongue being French, of course. Through this policy, students within the French education system learn 2 foreign languages, with the end goal being that students are proficient in 2 modern languages at the time of graduation.
Overwhelmingly, students choose English as their first foreign language, with the second foreign language choice often being split between German and Spanish, 2 language powerhouses in Europe and abroad. Furthermore, French schools partner with one school abroad in the hopes of promoting linguistic exchanges amongst students. All of this is well and good, but what is interesting is that the promotion of individual multilingualism does not translate into acceptance of societal multilingualism. Remember those waves of immigration we touched on a second ago? Often those families speak French, but there are many immigrants who come to this country for whom French is a completely foreign language. In those cases, the families better learn to speak French and speak French fast, or at the very least, teach their children to speak French so they can get along in school. And even if the immigrant families do speak French, they often prefer to speak their mother tongues at home and teach their children the linguistic and cultural heritage that was left behind in their countries of origin. Sadly, the French education system does not tolerate the speaking of other languages within its classrooms.
For example, let's take a look at Alsace. Alsace is a region bordered by Germany and Switzerland, and a place of great linguistic diversity. There you can hear the regional language of Alsatian, German, Swiss German, French, or any combination of all of the above. And that's not even considering the linguistic impact of immigrants who do not share a border with France.
In a case study of an Alsatian classroom, there were quite a few Turkish students. These Turkish-speaking students, upon arrival at the school, were singled out from the French-speaking students so as to avoid any cultural, religious, or linguistic differences within the classroom. Furthermore, Turkish was banned from the classroom, and similar to practices within the United States, these students were taken out of the classroom and taught French. As it has been said, the French education system is an instrument of Francization and French citizenship building, and similarly to the assimilationist policies that were imposed overseas on North African colonies, France is doing the same thing today, except now it is on their own soil. For the most part, France's policy toward others has been one of deliberate ignorance under the cloak of liberté, égalité, fraternité, meaning liberty, equality, and fraternity. France aims to treat everyone equally, but equally does not mean equitably. This mindset extends itself very easily over the linguistic landscape of France and is also inextricably tied to the cultural landscape of France. The expectation within this country, not unlike the United States, is that upon arrival you will learn to speak the language, you will learn the French culture, and you too will adopt the motto of liberté, égalité, fraternité.
Through this expectation, France effectively eliminates the other within its country. Or does it? What we have found is that within France, there is a linguistic and cultural conflict bubbling just below the surface, and the roots are largely tied to the country's history of fervent nationalism and imperialism. It seems to us as if France thinks it can still live in a monocultural, monolinguistic world, but its population tells a different story. The treatment of those who are others in France is not great, and there is great pressure to Frenchify anyone who is different in the name of national unity. In more recent years, the North African and Middle East population in France has faced extreme backlash. The backlash has revealed itself in large part through a fervent opposition to the rise of Arabic within the country. There is a sense that within France, the Arabic language is equated to Islam and Islam to terrorism. So in addition to the historical nationalism, the resistance to the Arabic language in France also lends itself to rising Islamophobia. What's interesting, though, is that the European Union reports that only 2.64% of the French population speaks Arabic as either a native language or a learned language. The only language, other than French of course, that tallies over 10% is English at 24%, followed by Spanish at 9%, then German and Italian. These percentages reflect the preferences of students in choosing their foreign languages at school.
But back to Arabic. Let's consider this idea floating around France that Arabic and Islam are dangerous to the country, and take a look at the current Minister of Education, Najat Vallaud-Belkacem. She is a Moroccan-born woman who moved to France at the age of 5 with her mother and siblings to reunite with her immigrant father in Amiens. She, like many others, went through the French school system and was forced to pick up the language and adopt French customs. While she does not appear to resent this experience, she describes herself as a pure product of the French Republic and living proof of the happy integration of modern France. She does recognize the power of the education system to assimilate immigrant children, particularly those who do not speak French as a first language.
So it appears as if her experience has been positive, right? Well, think again. As a member of the Socialist Party, of course she has faced opposition from right-wing French politics. But what was unpredictable was that right-wing supporters used her Moroccan heritage and the Arabic language as a weapon against her. Memos with her forged signature circulated throughout the media and the population stating a proposal of compulsory Arabic lessons for all French elementary school children. Needless to say, she faced immense scrutiny over this, but don't forget, she didn't even make that proposal in the first place. The French opinion of Arabic is so low that even a fake proposal of Arabic lessons was viewed as an existential threat to the French way of life. Keep in mind, too, that the North African population in France is one of the largest ethnic groups in the entire country. Vallaud-Belkacem has not been deterred by these falsehoods, though. In fact, she remains a bold advocate for linguistic rights in schools, She has pushed to expand the foreign language offerings to students, including an increased opportunity for students to learn Arabic in school. It is hard to imagine France as anything other than a French-speaking country, but looking at immigration trends and the impact of globalization, maybe a more publicly multilingual France is on the horizon.
So, now that we've painted a fairly bleak picture of the linguistic landscape of France, we wanted to highlight the positive changes that have occurred regarding language acceptance and preservation in the country. Of course, we have Najat Vallaud-Belkacem that we just mentioned as a bright light for language and cultural advocacy in France. But what else? In 1951, France passed the Loi d'Examen, which provided for the elective instruction of regional languages in French public schools. Unfortunately, this law was passed a little too late because regional language use was already in great decline by this point in history.
There is a current resurgence in France right now in support of regional languages. Languages such as Occitan, Breton, Catalan, and Basque have been supported through the founding of cultural centers that teach these languages, as well as the cultural heritage with which they associate. Many radio stations have also been created to spread regional languages such as Radio Languedoc, which promotes Occitan and broadcasts in that language. While it is difficult to say whether or not these regional languages can survive through current efforts, it is reassuring that there is an interest that exists in preserving these heritage languages and cultures.
In recent years, France has also seen a rise in cultural centers that focus on various nations, languages, and cultures. Often described as collaborations between France and the country of interest, these centers provide language courses, cooking classes, art exhibits, and a variety of other cultural experiences. Perhaps France is moving in the right direction at welcoming the other.
Minister of Education Najat Vallaud-Belkacem believes that France provides, quote, a true melting pot of different national identities and ethnicities. But we would argue that it's more of a tossed salad. All of the different ingredients are coming into contact with one another as languages do in international communities, but they never really quite mix. In fact, salad ingredients often become stratified themselves. The tomatoes always seem to fall to the bottom, while the lettuce somehow ends up on the top. In the same way, languages in France become stratified. Regional languages, and languages deemed dangerous, like Arabic, end up at the bottom, while the English and other European languages seem to be on top. The final component of the salad, obviously, is the dressing, which covers all of the ingredients and gives them a similar flavor. The French language is applied in this way to all who grow up and live in France. Overall, France seems to be a very privately multilingual society, but hopefully within the future, these private multilingual tendencies are given a space to shine in the public life, particularly for those people groups that have been marginalized by France in the past.